There's another segment that I would fall into where my shadow side, my trap, my pit that I can slip into, rather than operating out of insecurity, is operating from arrogance. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I think some of that for me is I was always a pretty naturally confident person, and I got rewards and promotions and uh, salary increases and ego strokes for that. And so for the first, 30, probably the first 30 years of my vocational life, um, I I was just regularly affirmed for being an a-hole is the blunt truth about it. And I'm probably exaggerating a little bit, but I remember specifically at one church, I was told by two guys who were overseeing me, two guys that I saw as mentors, that I aspired to be like them. They very wrong-headedly told me my lack of mercy was the strength of my leadership. And what a horrible thought. But that's
That
the
is
exact
leading someone down the wrong path,
but
man.
that's the exact quote. I am exactly quoting them. And I took that in because it was coming from mentors. And I very specifically remember a day, fast forward 10 years from that moment, sitting in my office at a church. I was the executive pastor of a large church, and I had 3 meetings in a row where I spoke truth that I thought needed to be spoken, but I did so in a way that was not compassionate to the person who was hearing it. And it was an act. As much as your insecurity might cause you to put on certain clothing, I don't mean literally a role and step into a role. My thinking that speaking the truth was the outfit that I put on. It was the clothing that I put on. And in those 3 meetings in a row, I made 3 people cry. And the first one, I thought, oh, that's what happens when you tell the truth. And the second one, I felt a slight moment of disequilibration, of being off
Mm.
balance. And the third one, it all came crashing down. And it was the beginning of 2 decades now of wrestling with what does it mean for me to be still a strong and decisive leader, but one with compassion. And that was a really different idea. That sounds crazy to some listeners because that's just not their experience. But I find that there is a segment that operate in that space too. They're probably not the people listening. The people who need to hear that are probably not the people listening to the authentic pastor.
Yeah, let's hope. Right. Now, I think so. For my story with that might be that I think I first started to get accolades for being the shock person. I
Yeah,
would say things shocking
yeah,
in youth ministry circles, national
yeah,
youth ministry circles, and pretty soon now I'm being hired to say things to shock
yeah,
people.
yeah.
And matter of fact, I think it was your last year at as the president of YS. You were stepping out. Um, our friend Mark Matlock was filling an interim role or stepping in there for a
Mm-hmm.
while, and I was doing main stage in Nashville.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew exactly what they wanted me to say, and because they knew I would say it.
Yeah,
And my whole message was, I mean, it had some sexual innuendo undertones to giving students the chance to do something for the first time, and and I knew that it would literally get the attention that I wanted and get the point across. But at the end of the day, I don't think I would do it today because it's not near as effective, but I did it then. And I did it for a long time to be that. And now my other podcast actually uses the title, The Square Peg in the Round Hole. And Cindy tells me quite often, she'll like, you don't need just to say something just to get people going. There's a different way to start this conversation. And so, like, your lack of mercy, which was someone validated, you look back and say, okay, been 20 years and I've learned how to do that differently, right? And I have too, finally, to say, okay, I can have a much more effective conversation without having to be the throw shock value in or just be so countercultural to the
Yeah.
ministry world that it gets people to take notice, because you might be doing greater damage through 3 honest conversations without mercy, just like I might be doing greater damage instead of you actually bringing people on board.